This is a family matter. That's what Diane Kessler said to me, standing in the doorway of her family's lake house at 1 in the morning, blocking it with her whole body like she was guarding something worth more than my sister's life. Behind her, muffled through walls and distance, I could hear banging, fists against wood from somewhere deep inside that big, dark house. I'm 41 years old, own a small contracting business, 3 guys in a truck, torn my rotator cuff 8 months ago on a job I shouldn't have been doing myself, still not cleared to lift anything heavier than a coffee mug, according to my surgeon. That night, I put my full weight into a locked door with that same shoulder and didn't feel a thing until the next morning. My name's Grant Ashworth. I live in Millhaven, about 30 minutes from Cedar Lake, where the Kesslers have owned a piece of waterfront since before I was even born, the kind of family whose name sits on a plaque at the marina and gets mentioned every single year at the county fair. My sister Casey is 29. The only family I've got left since our dad passed 3 years ago after a short fight with cancer nobody saw coming fast enough, and the kind of person who calls me for a flat tire or a bad breakup. Small stuff, manageable stuff, except this wasn't either of those things, not even close. It was late September, cold enough on the water that the dock lights already had that thin halo they only get right before the first real frost. My phone rang at 12:51 a.m. Grant, Casey's voice, thin, scared in a way I'd never heard from her, not even the year our dad died. Please, he's going to hurt me. Casey, where are you right now? Is Tyler there with you? The line went dead before she could answer. I didn't grab a jacket, didn't even think to. Drove out doing 70 on roads with no shoulder to speak of, my bad arm aching just from gripping the wheel too tightly the whole way there. When I pulled into that circular drive, every light in the house was on except the porch. Diane Kessler, 58, stood in the doorway, arms folded. Grant, she said my name like it genuinely tasted bad in her mouth. It's late. This is a family matter. You need to head home right now. That's my sister banging on something in there, Diane. I can hear her right now. Move. This is a family matter, Grant. I need you to respect boundaries and go home. Casey will call you in the morning, once she's calmed down. She won't be calling anyone if you don't move right now. Something in my chest went very quiet and very cold, quieter than anger has any business feeling. Move, Diane. Last time I'll ask you nicely. She didn't move. So I did the thing 8 months of physical therapy should have talked me out of. I put my good shoulder, then my bad one, when the good one wasn't enough, into that door, until the frame gave. Tyler Kessler came out of a side room in sweatpants, hands up like he was the reasonable one in this entire situation. Grant, you don't understand. She just needed to calm down. We were arguing and... I wasn't listening. The banging was coming from a hallway closet at the end of the hall, the kind built into old lake houses for coats and boots and folded lawn chairs, with an actual brass latch on the outside. Old, the kind nobody thinks to remove because nobody ever imagines using it on a person. I pulled it open, and there was my sister, sitting on the floor of that closet among a stack of life jackets, knees pulled to her chest, wrists red and raw from pounding on a door that only locked from the outside. Casey, hey, I'm here. She grabbed my arm so hard it hurt, my bad shoulder screaming, and me not caring even slightly. He locked me in, she said, voice shaking, teeth chattering from the cold of that unheated closet. We were arguing about the money again, and he said I needed to calm down, and he locked the door and just left me in here. I don't even know how long, Grant. It felt like forever. Why, I said, turning toward Tyler, my voice low and controlled in a way that scared me a little myself. Would you ever, for any reason at all, lock a grown woman in a closet? She was hysterical. I panicked. I didn't know what else to. You don't get to explain your way out of this one, Tyler. I helped Casey up carefully, her legs unsteady beneath her, my bad shoulder taking most of her weight without complaint. Diane stood in the hallway now, arms still crossed, watching the whole scene like it was an inconvenience to her evening, rather than her son locking a grown woman in a closet inside her own house. If you take her out of here tonight, Grant, you have absolutely no idea what you're starting. I looked her dead in the eye, my sister mattering more in that moment than anything this woman could ever threaten me with. Lady, you have no idea what you just started. Welcome back if you've been with us a while. Get comfortable, because this one earns every minute. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe and let's get into it. I drove Casey to Millhaven Urgent Care, my hands not entirely steady the whole way there. A nurse got her into a room quickly, checked the marks on her wrists, wrapped them lightly, checked her temperature and blood pressure, confirmed nothing was broken, just badly shaken and mildly dehydrated from nearly 3 hours in that unheated closet. Any dizziness? Trouble breathing at any point? The nurse asked, checking her pupils with a small light. A little dizzy near the end, Casey admitted. I think I was just scared. That's a normal response to what you went through. The nurse made a note, then looked at her directly. You want to file a police report? No pressure either way. Just want you to know it's an option tonight specifically, while everything's fresh. Casey shook her head fast. No, not yet. Please, not yet. That stopped me cold. Of everything I expected her to say once she was safe, that wasn't it. Casey, after what he did. I know what he did. Her voice cracked, but her eyes didn't. And it's not just tonight, Grant. It's been building for a year. She pulled out her phone, cracked screen barely holding together, and turned it toward me, thumb scrolling slowly. Screenshots, bank statements, emails she'd apparently been quietly saving for longer than I wanted to think about. If I go to the police over one bad night, his family's lawyers make it about my mental state before it's ever about what he actually did. We don't fight them head on. I sat with that for a long moment, 41 years old, thinking I understood my little sister completely, finding out she'd been carrying this alone for a full year. Casey moved back in with me after that night, into the guest room that used to be our dad's office. First few days, she barely talked. Then one evening, laptop open at my kitchen table, she started talking fast, like she needed to get it all out before her nerve gave up. 2 years ago, I put my whole inheritance into the Kessler Lake Development Fund, she said, not looking up from the screen. $150,000, everything Dad left me. Silent partnership in the Cedar Lake project, the same land the house sits on. Tyler said it was smart, family looking out for family. I signed what I genuinely thought was a standard partnership agreement. And it wasn't. There's a second signature page, Grant, buried behind the one I actually read carefully, naming Tyler sole managing partner with full authority over my stake. I don't think I signed it. I don't remember ever seeing that page. She rubbed her eyes. Every time I asked about returns, Diane said the project was in a slow phase, that pulling money out would hurt everyone. I got locked out of the investor portal about 4 months ago, told it was a system migration. That's when it really hit me, sitting there at my own kitchen table watching my sister's hands shake slightly as she scrolled through 2 years of her own financial life laid bare on a laptop screen. This was never just a bad boyfriend. Never just a relationship that had gone wrong the ordinary way relationships sometimes do. This was a heist, dressed up carefully in a relationship's clothes, patient enough to run for 2 full years without anyone outside that family ever suspecting a thing. So we call a lawyer. They fund half the zoning board in this county, Grant. You think we win on screenshots alone? They'll say I'm unstable. They'll say you broke down a door. She wasn't wrong. That stung more than I wanted to admit. So what? We just let them keep everything? Let them win? We don't let them win, Casey said. We just don't hand them anything to fight over yet. We need something they can't spin, can't explain away over dinner with a smile. Screenshots from me alone, they can dismiss as one bitter ex-girlfriend. We need more than my word. So what do we actually do? I don't know yet, she admitted, but I'm not walking into this the way I walked into that fund 2 years ago. Blind, trusting, signing what somebody hands me. A week later, Casey came to me with something else. Laptop turned toward me. An old email thread pulled up on the screen. There's a woman named Renata Ochoa, she said, turning the laptop toward me a little more. She used to keep the Kessler Fund's books, well before my time with them even started. Fired 18 months ago now. I found her name buried in this thread, a dispute about accounting irregularities that got quietly settled with an NDA attached. I think she might actually talk to us, off the record, if we're careful about how we approach her. We met Renata at a diner 2 towns over, somewhere the Kesslers had never once eaten in 30 years according to her, deliberately chosen for exactly that reason, a corner booth facing the door out of old habit. She was maybe 50, gray coming in fast at the temples, tired in the specific way people get after being made to feel a little crazy for telling the truth for too long without anyone believing them. I flagged that second signature page myself, back when I still worked there, going on 2 years ago now, she said, stirring coffee she never actually drank, just moving the spoon in slow circles for something to do with her hands. Told Diane directly, to her face, sitting in that same fund office, that it looked wrong to me, the ink, the pressure on certain letters, the whole feel of it compared to the first page. She told me I was mistaken, that questioning family paperwork wasn't part of my job description at all. 2 weeks later I was let go over an unrelated restructuring, convenient timing if you ask me. Though nobody ever did ask me that directly. They made me sign an NDA, just to get my last severance check released to me. I've hated myself a little, for signing that thing every single day since. Would you be willing to testify to any of this, formally? If it protects Casey, and doesn't put my name in the local paper before I'm actually ready for that, then yes. I've been waiting 18 months for someone to finally ask me the right question. She slid a small flash drive across the sticky diner table, copies of internal emails she'd quietly kept against her own lawyer's advice at the time, tucked away in a drawer at home for exactly a moment like this one, just in case it ever actually came, some part of her apparently never quite believing it would. Why keep them at all, I asked, if you'd already signed the NDA? Because signing something under pressure doesn't make you stop knowing what's true, she said. It just makes you wait longer to say it out loud. She wrapped both hands around her cold coffee cup. I've got a mortgage and a kid in community college. I couldn't afford to fight them at the time. I could afford to keep the emails, though, and hope. What made you finally willing to use them? You two showing up and asking the right question instead of the wrong one, she said simply. Everybody else who ever asked me about that job wanted to know why I got fired. Casey's the first person who ever asked me what I actually saw. I had a second piece to add of my own. 20 years in contracting in this county means I know half the folks at the permits office on a first-name basis, know which clerks stay late on a Thursday, and don't mind pulling an extra file for a familiar face who's brought them coffee more than once over the years. I spent 3 separate afternoons there myself, working through binders of public filings tied to the Cedar Lake development, the liens filed against the property over the past several years, the easements nobody had ever formally disputed, and eventually, buried in a quarterly filing nobody outside an accountant would ever think to actually read closely, a shell company called Lakeside Consulting Partners, registered to receive consulting fees from the fund on a quarterly basis going back exactly 2 years, the same window Casey's inheritance had quietly gone missing into. I laid it all out on my own kitchen table that night, next to Renata's flash drive, next to Casey's own bank statements. 3 completely separate sources, none of them able to see each other before that night, and every single one of them told the exact same story. This is real, Casey said quietly, one hand resting flat on top of the stacked papers, as if to make sure none of it would disappear. This isn't just my word against theirs anymore, Grant. This is public record, an insider's sworn testimony, and my own bank statements. 3 separate things all saying the exact same thing at once. That's the whole point, I said. One voice, they can dismiss as bitter or confused. 3 voices coming from 3 completely different directions, a fired employee, public county records, and your own bank. That's a lot harder to explain away over a family dinner with a firm handshake and an easy smile. Casey looked at the 3 stacks for a long moment. So what do we actually do with it? I don't want to just hand it to a lawyer and wait a year while they lawyer up right back at us. No, I agreed. I don't think we hand it to anyone quietly at all. I think whatever we do with this, we do it somewhere they can't control the room. Word got back to Tyler about 6 weeks in, though not the way either of us expected, and not through anything I'd done wrong. He showed up at my place one evening without calling first, agitated, nothing like his usual easy self, hands jammed deep in his jacket pockets. Someone's been asking Renata Ochoa questions around town. Her old employment lawyer called our family's attorney completely out of nowhere last week. You know anything about that, Grant? My stomach dropped, and not for my own sake this time. For hers. If they figured out Renata had actually talked to anyone, they'd bury her under an NDA violation lawsuit before she ever got the chance to say a single word publicly, and she'd already lost 1 job for telling the truth once. No idea what you're talking about, Tyler. Maybe she's just cleaning up some loose end from her old job. People do that sometimes years later. Funny timing, is all, he said, studying me a second too long, jaw working slightly. Right around when you started asking about the fund's history. People from your family's past tend to carry complicated feelings around for a long time, Tyler. That's not exactly breaking news to anyone who's worked there. He let it go, mostly, some of the tension draining back out of his shoulders. But it rattled me badly enough that I called Casey the second he left. "They're on to Renata," I told her. "Not onto us specifically, but close enough that it doesn't matter." "How close exactly?" "Close enough that if we wait for the full timeline we originally planned, she could get hit with a lawsuit before she ever even gets the chance to say anything that actually helps you." Casey went quiet on the line for a moment. "Then we move the whole timeline up. Whatever we've got right now, however incomplete it still feels, we use it now, instead of waiting for it to feel completely finished. Casey, if we go too early, if there's still a gap in what we've actually got." "There's always going to be a gap, Grant. There's no version of this where I feel completely, perfectly ready. I've been waiting to feel ready for 2 entire years, and look exactly where that got me. Locked in a closet, banging on a door nobody could hear." She paused, and I heard her take a breath on the other end of the line. "What's coming up this weekend that we could actually use, right now, today?" I thought about it for a second, pulling up the county events calendar out of pure habit, the same one I check constantly for every permit deadline in my own line of work. The boat launch dedication, the one the Kesslers funded years back. It's scheduled for Saturday afternoon. The whole county's invited. "That's public," Casey said slowly, something shifting audibly in her voice, sharpening. "That's the whole community out there watching. That's not a boardroom, that's not a room they get to control from start to finish. Casey, that's a genuinely enormous swing, with a pretty short runway to actually pull it off cleanly." "So was breaking down a door with a torn rotator cuff at 1 in the morning," she said. "I think we're well past careful at this point, Grant. I think we're at effective now, and effective doesn't always feel comfortable while you're doing it." The county was set to formally dedicate the new public boat launch the Kesslers had funded at Cedar Lake that same weekend. A whole Saturday afternoon event, the local paper covering it, a handful of county officials in attendance, a ribbon the size of a bedsheet, and Diane scheduled to give remarks about the family's 3 generations of stewardship of that lake, a phrase Casey told me she'd already seen, printed on the event program in advance. Casey's idea, the moment she heard about the dedication, no boardroom, no private closing meeting, where the Kesslers controlled every inch of the room the way they always had. Do it in public instead, in front of the exact community whose good opinion this family had spent 3 generations carefully building. We arrived a little after the ribbon cutting itself, timed deliberately, once Diane had already stepped up to a small podium near the new dock, microphone in hand, sunlight glinting off the water behind her, in a way that probably looked wonderful in whatever photo the paper would have run the next morning. "And it's that same spirit of stewardship," Diane was saying, "warm and practiced, that our family has tried to bring to this lake for 3 generations now, long before." Casey walked up with Renata beside her, a thin folder held against her chest, and a local reporter Renata had quietly briefed the day before, already positioned closer to the podium than the other attendees, notepad already out. "Mrs. Kessler," Casey said, her voice not loud exactly, but clear enough to carry over the small crowd and cut cleanly through the speech, steadier than I'd heard her sound in the 2 years I'd actually been paying attention. "Before you finish talking about stewardship, I think the people standing here today should see what actually happened to my inheritance inside your family's fund." A murmur went through the small crowd, heads turning, phones already starting to come up. Diane's face went rigid, that practiced composure cracking for just half a second before she caught herself and smoothed it back over. "This isn't the place for this conversation, Casey. We can discuss this privately." "You told me the same thing about a locked closet once," Casey said, steady, not backing down an inch. "I'm done deciding what counts as the right place for the truth, based on what's convenient for you and your family." Renata stepped forward then, chin up, voice steadier than it had even been at that diner weeks earlier. "My name is Renata Ochoa. I used to keep the books for this family's fund, for nearly 6 years. I was fired for saying exactly what's written in the folder my friend here is holding right now. I've been quiet about it for a year and a half because I was made to feel like keeping quiet was the price of my own severance. I'm done being quiet, and I'm done being afraid of a family that stole from its own." The reporter was already writing fast. A county commissioner standing near the podium visibly stopped smiling, glancing sideways at his own aide. Tyler, off toward the edge of the small crowd, looked like a man watching his own name shrink in real time, in front of neighbors he'd known his whole life. Diane didn't have a rehearsed line ready for this one. First time in my life I'd ever seen that happen to her. You blocked a door, I said, stepping up beside my sister, with her locked in a closet 3 feet behind you, and called it a family matter that wasn't mine to interfere with. This is a family matter too, Diane. Just a considerably bigger one than the one you wanted. She had nothing at all to say back to that. The applause that was supposed to follow her remarks never really started. Just an uncomfortable shuffling silence broken only by the sound of the reporter's pen scratching steadily against paper. Tyler pushed forward finally, voice tight. This is completely inappropriate doing this here, in front of everyone, ambushing my mother at a public event. You locked my sister in a closet for 3 hours, over an argument about money your family stole from her, I said, not raising my voice at all, letting it land exactly as flat and plain as it needed to. I think we're well past a conversation about what's appropriate in front of your neighbors, Tyler. That conversation ended the night I broke down your mother's door. The county commissioner near the podium had already stepped quietly to one side, phone pressed to his ear, speaking low and fast to someone on the other end. A few onlookers had their own phones out now too, recording openly, not even pretending not to, the way people do once they sense they're watching something that'll matter later. Casey held the folder out toward the reporter directly, hands steady now, in a way they hadn't been that first night in the hospital. Everything in here is documented, fully sourced, public filings anyone can request themselves, internal correspondence, my own bank records going back 2 years. I'm not asking a single person here to just take my word for any of it. If this story's landing with you, hit subscribe, drop a comment telling me what you'd have done in my position. It genuinely helps this channel, and I read every single one. It took the County Fraud Division a full 4 months to formally confirm what Renata, the public filings, and Casey's own bank records had already made perfectly plain the day of that dedication. The forged signature page didn't survive a single handwriting comparison once an actual expert got to it. Casey's full stake got restored entirely, plus damages awarded on top of it. Tyler lost every professional license tied to managing client funds, permanently, no appeal, no path back into that line of work anywhere in the state. The Kessler name came off 2 separate building plaques within the year that followed, including, eventually, the one at that very same boat launch where this whole thing had first come apart in public, in front of the community they'd spent 3 generations courting. Renata got her old severance settlement voided entirely, and a new, considerably larger one negotiated in its place, this time with no silence clause attached to any part of it whatsoever. She sends Casey a Christmas card every single year now without fail, signed simply, "Glad I finally said it." Nothing more needed beyond that. I finished a renovation job for an elderly widow on the other side of the lake that same fall, replaced her whole dock system essentially at cost. No real reason beyond the fact that something about her reminded me a little of what our own mother might have been like at that same age, and it felt like exactly the kind of thing worth doing with a good shoulder, while I still had one left to use. No strings, no accounting trick attached anywhere in it. Casey moved into her own place that winter. First time in 2 years she'd signed a lease with only her own name printed on it. No co-signer, no partner, nothing borrowed from anyone else's approval. She still calls me for the small stuff now, flat tires and bad dates, nothing bigger than that anymore, and some quiet nights, sitting on my own porch with nothing urgent pulling at either of us. That's the whole victory right there, small and ordinary, and completely hers again. I still see Diane around town occasionally, at the grocery store, once at the pharmacy counter, and she looks straight through me now, like I never existed at all. No nod, no acknowledgement, which honestly, most days, feels like exactly the ending this particular story deserved all along. If you're one of the good ones who likes seeing people finally answer for it, hit subscribe, drop a comment, let me know where you're watching from. I'll see you on the next one.